Good morning and welcome to this week's Jump Recruitment discussion. This week we're talking about your sales pitch. Is it getting washed upon the shore? Because we're all pushing towards more business development. We're all trying to differentiate with ourselves and our clients. We're all trying to do different sort of things. So I thought this week, because we've not done for quite some time, we're going to have no slideshow this week, so we're all on camera, which is really good. So you can see what we're all doing. You can see Paul doing his emails and doing the other things that he's from that sort of front. But I thought I'd give you some stats.
That's a good thing, is it, Alan?
It's a good thing, yeah, that we can see Paul doing his emails and paying attention to everybody. So some stats. Sales prospecting. I just went onto HubSpot and I thought I'd pull them because they pull stats from all over the place. 96% of all prospects do their own research before speaking to a sales rep. So that's a really good, interesting thing that what you're sending to your clients is really important. Okay, 71% of prospects prefer to do solo research instead of talking to a person. Follow-up sales stats. 82% of sales pros say that building a relationship with people is more important, or the most important part of the sale and the most enjoyable. 60% of customers say no 4 times before saying yes. 80% of sales require 5 calls or more. 48% of salespeople never make a second sales call to a client. 44% of salespeople give up after 1 call. 66% of buyers prefer to be contacted via email initially. That came from LinkedIn. The first follow-up email is very effective, but can be boosted by 49% if it has a decent reply rate. The optimal number of follow-ups in a B2B outreach is 2 emails. So just sending 1 email isn't enough. It's sending a second and a third. And the optimal time to wait before calling a cold email is 2 to 5 days. So there's lots of different things that we can talk about. And obviously what we want to do is, is your sales strategy, is your sales pitch getting washed upon the shore? And obviously a lot of that is about what you do pre that sales conversation and then during that. So we've got the full Jump team today. So Dave, Paul and Heather. So welcome everybody. So first question. How can a recruitment agency effectively assess whether their current sales pitch is resonating with their target audience? And what indicators should we look for to determine whether or not it is effective or not?
Hey, you can't be expecting an HR answer on this one, Howard.
Who's going to kick this one off? Okay, I'll start in that case. So the question about how do you know whether your current sales pitch is having any kind of impact with the target audience is, I think, in some respects, pretty obvious. It's going to be reflected in the volume of roles that you pick up. It's going to be reflected in the nature of your relationship with the clients, whether you're working on a pure contingent basis and picking up crumbs from tables, or whether you're close enough to your clients to be dealing with opportunities on a retained or an exclusive basis. It will be there in terms of the number of followers or contacts that you're accumulating on your social media platforms. It will be there on your click-throughs, on your marketing materials, and so on and so on. We often talk about the fact that managing a business is a lot to do with measuring. You've got to be able to monitor what it is that you're doing. There's no point in thinking things work or they're not working. You have to have the hard facts. So I think that for every recruitment company, all of the signs are there regarding whether they're having some level of influence and some impact, but it's dependent upon the statistics and the data. But it's also there in the sentiments and the morale of your people, because you can see it, feel it and touch it when you're in offices. We can, when we go into our offices, when we speak to our clients, you can sense the moment you step over the threshold whether business is doing okay or it isn't. It's very much there in the air around the people that work in the organization. So the answer, I think, is that, we don't have much time, but there's a huge number of indicators that let you know whether what you do has resonance.
Yeah, and I think if I heard the question right, Howard, a slightly different answer to Paul. Not in the not that Paul's wasn't right; it was absolutely spot on. But I was thinking that in some respects, in the way we're working with clients now, sales pitch is almost an old style term, because the best way of understanding whether you're getting it right is to having a conversation. And of course we're selling because we're trying to introduce our services. But if we can be in a position where we're having a really good conversation with our clients, and for me, I would measure that on 4 things. Now, the output will be what Paul has said. Am I getting more business? Am I getting more opportunities? But for me, how relevant is what I'm saying to the client? What sort of information or insight am I bringing them? Because so often I hear companies do a sales pitch where they are pitching everything that they do. But actually what clients want at the moment, I guess they always have, but it's even more impactful now, is tell me something about what's going on in the market. Give me some insights. How concise is what you're talking about? Are you doing a 20 slide deck pitch, or are you going to have a concise 5-minute, 10-minute overview? And what are the takeaways? And I think if you can get those 4 things, relevance, the concise nature of it, some insight, and some takeaways, then you're really having a really good conversation, and that becomes more of a pitch. And then hopefully you will then get to the situation where Paul's talked about, where you are getting more business and you're getting more sticking with your clients.
Ella, from a HR, do you want a HR perspective on this, or do you want me to jump in with another sales perspective?
Absolutely not anything to do with HR, this one. I'm listening.
Right,
I'm
okay.
listening and learning.
Right, I shall jump in
I'll
then.
argue with Paul just for the sake of it, but you know.
Good. Okay, so before that happens, then I'm going to sort of put a slightly different view of this, because I think it's, you know, whether or not is your sales pitch resonating, is it hitting, is it being effective? And I think the question is, does your sales pitch, does it engage and does it delight your clients? Is it differentiating yourself from your business? And I think how you tell that is it's how the client treats you. You know, if the client treats you with mutual respect and he sees it as two-way street, then your sales pitch is having the effect that it should have. If the client just treats you, as I keep saying, and I've been saying for years and years, like a you know, we treat every client as a prospect, they treat every agency like a suspect. If the client's treating you like a suspect, then your sales pitch isn't hitting the right audience, it isn't resonating the right notes, it's not being effective enough. So we need to change that. So certain things like, is your client open for suggestion? Will they change things based on your advice? And that's from things like data that Dave was talking about and information. It's talking about the pitch that's there. I think, does the client call you for advice? You know, does the client actually have a conversation with you and call you and say, I need some advice when they're coming to the thing? Which means that are you, and I think we measure things. I think one of the things that we should be measuring is, you know, a KPI, which is, are you the key person of influence in your market? Are you the person that your clients call to have a conversation with you? And I remember in lockdown, one of the things that we said when we first met, and it was interesting on one of the REC webinars where Paul and Dave and I first well, Paul and I obviously knew each other, but we didn't know Dave at that time that well.
Happy days.
They were the days.
Yeah, happy days.
One of the conversations that we said was, you know, how fragile was your client base? And the test of fragility was, had your client called you after lockdown to see if you were okay? And therefore, to me, I think that's still a relevant point, but slightly different, is that if your sales pitch is resonating with your target audience and it is being effective, then they'll be calling and talking. And I think that, to me, is the measure of a really good sales pitch, is how engrossed is your client in that sales pitch? Do they then own that sales pitch as their own? And therefore, do you become part of their business from there? So let's move to the next question then. How can a recruitment agency ensure that services that they offer remain relevant? Because it's changing all the time at the moment. And to the evolving needs of clients and candidates, put candidates in there as well, because at the moment the market's shifting very much on candidates as well. So how do we ensure that our services remain relevant to the evolving market?
I'm going to nip in with Paul's answer before he gives it.
Go on, steal away.
You know, we have to, as Paul says regularly, and he's right, so I'm not arguing with you, we have to be close to our clients. Yes. Right? We have to be talking to our clients, and we have to be listening to our clients. And as you say, Howard, it's also about the changing candidate market. We have to be talking to and listening to our candidates, and not just the candidates that we place, but the candidates that we don't place. So, you know, we really have to be talking and listening to, and that's not just in phone calls, it's in all the other ways that we interact with people, but we need to be getting market intelligence and staying on top of it all the time.
Well, naturally, I'm going to agree with you on this point.
Of course.
But you know, this point about listening is a really great point, because you know, how many people have I or any of us interviewed over the years, many years in our industry, who have entered the companies we're talking that we're representing, thinking that their job is to sell. You know, it's to go out, talk to people. Virtually everybody, but actually your point about listening is such an important one, because it's a skill in itself. The ability to ask the right questions and then to basically close your own mouth and use your ears and listen to what people are telling you is so relevant. And it's a cliche, isn't it? You know, we've got one of these, two of these, it's the old cliche, but you know, it is a real skill. And I think if you think about this from the perspective, even from our own social lives, our friends, our family, the people that we love most, the people that we enjoy being around the most, the people that listen to us, that are interested in us, that want to hear our opinions, and they listen far more than they talk. Now, one of the things that I think is becoming an old school habit is this, you make the point, is getting to see people, spending time with people face to face, with candidates as well as clients. And we don't do those things to the degree we used to. In fact, meeting candidates is almost something, it's taboo virtually these days. In the old days, he says, as an old person, we met every candidate. They came and saw us. It was easy because they'd walk in and see you. Nowadays, we don't see candidates. So, you know, the point that Howard makes about getting close to candidates, understanding them, what they feel, and whether we're being relevant. You know, if we don't see them and they're simple emails that we receive, we make no attempt to go out and talk to people or even use this method, then you have no chance of understanding whether we're being effective. This point about evolving needs is relevant. The industry is changing a lot, but the one thing that is we're going backwards on is the human touch. And it's the one thing we need to accelerate. It's the very thing that everybody is now talking about. I love these expressions that people use about being futurists. I'm going to have to come up with some new names for us lot, I think. But when you listen to the futurists, they talk about we need to be more consultative as an industry. What is that about? As you said very correctly, Heather, it's about seeing people, but more importantly, it's about listening.
So I think, you know, to coin that phrase from Monty Python, but you tell the young people that today and they just don't believe you. And I think if you start to think about what we're talking about, and this is sort of jumping before Dave gets a chance, you know, we talk about conversing together and we talk about having those conversations, okay? But how often are we having a conversation with a client, but it's falling on a client's deaf ears? How often do we have a conversation with a candidate and it's falling on their deaf ears? So I think it's a conversation that's a two-way street. So we're not getting talked at, we're getting a conversation that is about what's actually happening. And I think if you then want to start to think about remain relevant, you've got to be consistent in what you're supplying and consistent in how you're dealing with that client, because consistency means that you are there constantly with the client, and therefore when they start to change and start to evolve, that you can evolve with them and you can help change that with data and information, what's going on there. And we talk about the differences about what clients need from us. What clients need at the moment, as it's still a hard candidate market, they need their proposition to be placed inside the candidate marketplace. So candidates know who they are, what they are doing, etc. And we're in the best place in the market to do that. And therefore, they've got to stop thinking about, you know, making it a competitive marketplace. They've got to stop thinking about, you know, I read a post the other day on LinkedIn, which I thought was quite a clever post. And what it said was, what happened if your client said you can only send 2 CVs? So they might go out to 3 or 4 agencies, but you can only send 2 CVs. would that mean that you would spend more time finding better quality candidates because you want the best CVs to go across, rather than just sending the quickest candidate and then the filler candidates to make sure that you hit your quota? And I thought it was quite an interesting conversation, because again, that's about the evolving needs of a client, but it's about being consistent with the client and sending only the best. And it's about the client then understanding that that is that. So I think we've got to get that conversation right, that we should be conversing together, not getting talked at.
Just to make a point here, Howard, I mean, we're talking here about the recruitment industry and understanding whether we're relevant to our clients and candidates and so forth. But, just forget the word recruitment. Look at any industry sector and any company in those industry sectors that are successful, and you'll find organizations that are constantly communicating with their public. They're constantly evaluating what their customers want from them. And we sometimes forget that candidates are our customers. I hear customers referred to as clients. True. But we have when we run a business, we have 3 sets of customers in recruitment: candidates, clients, and our own people. And we need to be working very hard to communicate with 3 sets of customers constantly. You look at any business in any industry sector that is consistently successful, and their lines of communication with their audiences are very obvious. And if you happen to be a customer of those organizations, they are constantly trying to talk to you and listen to you. So we should just almost put aside the fact that this is a recruitment webinar and talk about it from a business perspective, and take stock from some of the great businesses that we all use outside of our own industry, and assess how they maintain relevance with their customers.
Dave?
Yeah, just quickly, one of the things I think you can do is get a client panel together. As recruiters, I think we've matured a lot, and there isn't so much, there's always competition between ourselves and our competitors, clearly, but actually there's also a chance for collaboration. And I think if whatever sector you're in, if you want to lead on something, get together with 3 or 4 of your competitors that you know and you trust, and get a client panel together and a candidate panel together and host it. It shows the clients that we as industry experts are mature, because we can work with our competitors, and also we will learn something. Now, will it give us competitive advantage against those other 5? Well, no, because your competitive advantage will come about on your delivery, how well you succeed on giving, filling the jobs, on putting teams together, on doing the search, whatever your service is. But I think there's an opportunity here to learn from our clients, who are much more likely to want to speak to a group of recruiters from different companies than they are from just one. So I think there's an opportunity here, just to answer the question about how we can ensure our services we offer are the right ones, find out what's on the client's hearts and minds.
So let's push that then. So what innovative strategies and techniques that recruitment agencies can employ then to differentiate themselves from the competition and sort of maintain their relevance in the marketplace? Because I think that's what you're talking about there, Dave, is, innovative techniques, strategies that we can employ that really separate us from the competition.
I think this is about positioning, and I think Dave makes a great point. I was going to make a similar point about focus groups. If you've ever dealt with marketing companies, for example, any new products that they take to market are thoroughly researched before they go ahead, and they'll have focus groups coming in to analyze the campaigns and so forth. I've attended 1 million, as we all have, 1 million different meetings over the years, feels like 1 million, where we come up with great ideas inside out of the businesses. We think we've got something that's going to make a difference, but we don't go and talk to the people we're aiming those ideas at. We don't really go and gauge response from candidates or clients, or if we do, it's pretty sporadic. It's not done in a measured or uniformed fashion. So I think the point about that Dave makes is a brilliant point. Having focus groups, or having people come in, clients perhaps that you talk to regularly, to ask them what they want and talk to them about the ideas we have, is a really great idea. And every organization have some pet clients, if I can use that expression, who are pro them and would be happy to give up their time. I think that's really important. I mean, here's an example of how you differentiate yourself. Do this, do webinars. Position yourselves as experts as you are in your sectors, and start to put yourselves out there doing webinars and podcasts. I have certain clients of mine that do podcasts and webinars pretty regularly, speaking to clients about their businesses, about their expertise. And in doing that, without selling themselves, they're positioning themselves as experts in their space, as spokespeople for their space. There are lots of things you can do, but you need to put yourself out there and be extremely visible.
Dave?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. I think a lot of people buy now on culture and on heart as well as on service. And my point I always make is, we talk about clients in big names, but actually the clients are normally individual people that we engage with on a client side. So for those of us that are dealing with smaller companies, that may only be 1 or 2 people. For those of us dealing with big companies, it may be 3 or 4 people out of 5,000. So what is it that drives the behavior? What is it that the person that we're dealing with really understands? What is their culture like? What is their heart like? What is it that makes them tick? If you can understand that, and you can translate that to your people to say, look, this is the way they behave, this is the way they buy, this is how they like to buy, this is how they like to be sold to use that old impression. If you can understand that, then whatever you're selling, you can wrap that around the way that they like to behave, the way that they like to buy. What are they interested in outside of work? Because rarely in a company are we dealing articulately with more than 5 or 6 people on a really strong level. Rarely. So sometimes maybe, but not that often. So it's about understanding the hearts and minds of those 5 or 6 people, getting under the skin of them, and making sure we know about them, making sure they know about us, making sure they know how we work and what our values are. And I think that helps cement a relationship, which can help with service.
So I think it's a very interesting conversation, because I think, from a recruitment point of view, there's very little that's different. Yes, technology's come in, it's changing certain things and how we there. But the big differentiators, I think what you hit on there, Dave, is how clients buy and how we buy products. And we all buy products. And I've had this conversation with lots of recruitment agencies over the sort of last sort of year. When was the last time you bought a product? What was the first thing you did? And almost 99% of people go, oh, I Googled it. I Googled the product. So you Googled the product. Okay. What did you look for? I looked for the product, found the product. I found lots of people who had the product, and then I compared it on price. But once I started to compare on price, I then started to compare on Google reviews to see whether that price was a good service. I'd get it. And sometimes I'd choose something that might be more expensive because it sounded a better service, etc., etc. So I think we've got to start to think about how our clients buy. And that first stat, which is a stat that I've been rolling out it's slightly different. I rolled it at 93%. They've got 96% of prospects do their own research before speaking to a human sales rep. And then 71% of prospects prefer to do solo research instead of talking to a person. So they're searching. So I think, it's strange that next we've got a webinar on your website, which is your shop window to the marketplace. But it's all about creating social proof. And I think if you can start to create really strong social proof with your client about your services, about your product, about your capability and capacity to deliver, I think that is a really different and very relevant in today's marketplace, because I think clients are looking for social proof now more than ever before. And so what your website looks like is really important. What your social media platform looks like is really important. And how you take that, I suppose, offline strategy to an online strategy, converting it from being in the ether, on the internet, etc., to actually a human conversation strategy. So the social proof now becomes backed up by your actual conversation, I think is now more important than ever before. And this is the bit that you've got to think about, is that if we look at the age group on this webinar, we're at the older end of the marketplace. And therefore, if you think about us
speak for yourself, Howard.
Bit rude.
Speak for yourself.
Rude. Harsh but fair, I think. Harsh but fair, I think, is you can't turn back the clock of time as it's ticking constantly. And even on this webinar, I'm getting balder and grayer and wrinkler.
You speak for yourself, mate.
That's because you can't get me.
That's because I didn't invite him to my 25th birthday party.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, what free bus pass is that in your back pocket? Anyway, so as we start to move on, it's about, the younger people are starting to get more and more involved in that buying. There's 7 or 8 people in every company involved in the buying process. So more people of a younger generation who are more inclined to do that social proof exercise are getting involved in that process. So we've got to start to think, if that is where our buyers are moving, we should be moving towards that and help them in that sort of pace. So I think there's a lot to be said about, staying relevant, and that is staying relevant with what the buying trends are like and what the behaviors are like.
Can I put in a slightly different angle on that, Howard, before you move to the next question?
Please disagree with him. It's important that somebody does.
I think before we move on to being innovative, to differentiate ourselves, how about we get the basics right? And with apologies to I've looked at the list of people who are on today, and some of them I know do this brilliantly, so this is not a criticism of those, but as an industry, if you look on LinkedIn, we still have a terrible reputation for the way we interact with candidates, right? Yep. And we forget that quite a big percentage of those candidates will subsequently become clients, right? So they're the people who are going to move into jobs and they're going to buy, and they just don't think well of recruiters, right? And if we don't, as an industry, do something to address by the way in which we interact with candidates, especially candidates who are just entering the job market, who are those young people, Howard, who are then subsequently being made the decisions, we're really on a hiding to nothing about changing the reputation of our industry. If we want to be viewed as consultants, we've got to stop behaving the way we behave towards candidates. And as I say, with apologies to those who I know who are listening, who are brilliant at that. But there are just too many recruiters who are really bad at that.
And Heather, that's such a good point. And I can speak from first-hand experience, because Oscar, my son's just come back from traveling. He's applied for 42 different jobs, lots of different industries. He's heard from 7. That
reflects my son's experience, right?
And
what sort of industry are we in?
Yeah.
Where less than 25% of the people bother to respond to a candidate.
Yeah.
Well, that goes back to that we're a transactional relationship, because we have a transactional relationship with our clients. It goes back to question 2, that our clients don't converse 100%. With us. They talk at us, and therefore we talk at our candidates, because it's the same thing. So we've got to get away from that.
We have to change that. We have to change that.
And if they want the best if they want the best candidates in the marketplace, then they have got to start to give us time to find the best candidates on the marketplace. So moving on then, and because this leads into that next question nicely, how do recruiters identify and leverage their unique selling points? Because we keep talking about unique selling points to recruiters, to craft a compelling sales pitch that sets them apart from the crowded marketplace.
I don't like USP as an expression, because it uses the phrase unique. And I actually don't think there is anything in our industry from any recruitment business that is unique. To be unique is really quite spectacular. I think it's about doing things better, frankly. I mean, certainly we talked a moment ago about being innovative, looking for solutions for clients, which I absolutely wholeheartedly endorse. But for the most part, it's about making sure that we deliver services that are relevant to our clients, that we do extremely well. It's about the detail. It always has been, always will be. A lot of that, to the points that are just being made here, I'm just looking at the chat box, and it has made the point that she was at a meeting yesterday, and they emphasized the fact that recruitment is a people business. We need to have relationships with clients and candidates. She says completely correctly. And I couldn't agree more with that point. So when we talk about USPs and sales pitches, let's strip it back. It's about making sure, we said it already, that we're consistently visible with our clients and candidates, that we're listening very carefully. We're asking relevant questions to understand their challenges. We are retreating, if that's the expression, but departing from those meetings, coming back with proposals, not sales pitches, proposals and solutions that we think will match the needs of our customers. And then we're deploying those processes, using our best efforts to be very detailed about what we do. Now, one of my clients is very much involved in investors in people. And the investors in people talk about embedded processes, one of their expressions. They talk about making sure that things work in a very sophisticated set way. The processes aren't left to people to think and work in a ad hoc fashion, that things work in a very regulated fashion. And I buy into that. I think all the right businesses, all the successful businesses have embedded processes that they follow. Even the most famous businesses outside of our industry have embedded processes. So I think when we all talk about the USPs, we ought to be very careful about that expression. I think it's very much about detail. I think it's very much about being truly, and very authentically interested in our clients and candidates' needs and who they are as people, as Annette says, and addressing those things. Sales pitch, due respect Howard's very old-fashioned expression. I think it's about being consultative. I think it's about listening. I think it's paying attention to detail.
I think for a USP, you could replace the word unique with unusual.
Yep.
And make that word memorable. Because all the time on LinkedIn, for example, I am getting pitched at with emails to services that I don't want, I'm not interested in, the grammar's not good. I mean, it just happens all the time. But very rarely does somebody do something that is memorable, that is unusual. And I think if we can find something unusual about the way that we sell our services, or that it may be a reference from a client about something we've done, but something that sticks out in a positive way from the market, we've got more chance of making that engagement. It is difficult to be unique. It is difficult to have something that is completely unique in our industry, but it is easier to have something more unusual. Be it something we're supporting a charity, be it we've promoted somebody within our business for something they've done outside of work. There are stories, and we'll come on to that, I'm sure, but there are stories that people in our business and our business will have that is unusual, that is memorable. And that can help us when we're talking to prospects as well as clients.
So I think you're right that, when you class it as USP, you're right. I don't think there are much or many unique things in recruitment, but doing the basic human interaction really well is unique, as Heather and Dave has absolutely outlined, in their son's experience. My son's going through the same thing. He's looking for a job at the moment, and he's applied to 4 or 5 really good recruitment agencies in Leeds, and not one of them has replied. Over the last 3 weeks, not one has replied. And it's really sort of quite interesting, but it's very interesting from a candidate's point of view that he has then struck them straight off the list and will not speak to them. He's looking at the people and saying, look at that company there. What does that look like, Dad? And they're going, well, look at that skill, look at that skill, look at that skill. Put the skills into a Google search, Max, and see which company comes out. And the companies come out. It could be that company, that company, that company. And he's now applying direct to the companies.
Yeah.
So I think in a crowded marketplace, sometimes it's those that shout the most that get spotted in a crowd. And therefore, if you're talking to everybody and speaking to everybody, you're the one that's been spotted in the crowd. You're the one that's orchestrating things. If you're the one that's conducting the crowd, and therefore, I think that uniqueness goes back to how you are relevant to the marketplace and how often do you converse with that marketplace. So, Dave, you touched on a point there, which it's like you've read these questions, Dave.
Makes a change.
I can assure you I haven't.
I was going to say it would be a first, but I'm pretty sure it probably won't be a first. But there you go. So the next
don't
question,
even know the name of the company, so I don't.
Don't bounce along with me. But there you go. It's a very quick one then. So, what role does story playing tell in enhancing the effectiveness of a recruitment agency's sale pitch, and how can recruiters incorporate that storytelling technique to better engage with candidates and clients? And I'll let Dave jump in on that first, because Paul will start to tell a story, and it could be Tuesday next week. Tuesday next week before we're off.
Well, having said that, it's very difficult to have something unique in recruitment. The one thing we do have that is unique is our story. As a founder, why we set up the business and what we hope to achieve from it, and how we want to work with our staff and our culture, that is unique. What you have is unique to you. And that is one of the few unique things that there is. And for many of us who set up businesses, we've got an unusual story. When we set up, what do we call Jump? That's it, yeah. When we set up Jump, our story behind that is unique. And whenever I tell the Jump story and how we came together, there's an interest there. So I think getting your story down is a really important thing. Some of the very, very big companies have roles such as Chief Storytelling Officer.
Yeah, that always makes me laugh.
It's hilarious.
It makes me laugh, but it's a really good thing, because if you have the gift of being able to communicate why you are, what you do, and how you do it, and it's a beautiful thing to listen to. And the people that speak eloquently and with passion about it, they really come across well. And I buy into the story. I'm a big fan of Ben Francis at Gymshark, and his story and his background and how he grew up, and he often tells that story and never get bored of hearing it. So if you, as a recruitment leader, can get your story off by Pat, you will also speak from the heart, because you don't need a script, because it's your story and it's about your business. So I think storytelling is an absolutely vital part of what you of how you can win business and secure business and keep going with the clients that you've got.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Dave. I just to spin this slightly as well, I think it's a lot to do with case studies. So, being close enough to clients to understand what their real needs are, and being able to illuminate situations where you and your business have approached similar problems in the past and exceeded expectations makes a big difference. If you've got testimonials, you have clients that would be advocates for your business, who would talk to other customers to let them know how well you've done for them, and use some of your success stories as case studies. I think it makes a big difference. It's when we make purchases, Howard always talks about purchasers' behaviors, and he's correct on this point. What we often do is we do research before we decide on what we're going to do. That comes down to booking a hotel, or going on holiday, or going on Amazon and looking at a product and just having a quick look at the reviews. We do that every day. I think people do that when they consider using recruitment businesses, and we should make it easy for customers to be able to assess how well we do, not only because we're very visible in terms of the testimonials and references we have on our LinkedIn profiles and on our websites, and I mentioned earlier podcasts and webinars and so forth, but also because we have case studies that perhaps are printed, or they're on PDFs, or on those sort of things. I think you've got to show evidence that you know what you're talking about. It's no good saying you're an expert. Show the evidence. And the best method of doing that is to get other people to talk about your business. Because when we talk about our business, of course, we're going to say wonderful things about it. Naturally, why wouldn't we? But people don't believe us most of the time. But when you get your customers and your candidates to talk about how well they've been treated and how well you did for them, that has real resonance.
So I'm going to add a little comment on there, because we go back to that comment we've been saying for last 3 or 4 webinars about the advent of social proof and how important it is. So when you go onto somebody's website and I see candidate Bill said this, but there's no surname or company. Client Jane says this, there's no surname, no company. And therefore, in the cynical world that we live in, everyone's going, that's just made up. So if you're going to put social proof as a case study, as a testimonial, it's a 2D piece of social proof. If you want to make it 3D, you've got to make it face to face. So have video technology of your clients talking about your business, have genuine client names, companies that they're working for, etc., that make that social proof jump out off the page. And then when you go and tell your story to the clients and the candidates, you turn it from a 2D to a 3D story where it absolutely becomes live and living. And so, it's interesting that how many people read a book nowadays, and they actually read a book and they like the feel and the touch of the book because it becomes 3D. But then when you watch and when you listen to it on Audible, it's a very different style of listening to it. And I've been switched off certain books, where I've read the books and I'm thinking that's great. Oh, I'll get the next book, but I'll get it on Audible. But the person reciting it just is so boring and not great, and it just doesn't come alive. So you've got to make it come alive, and I think it's those stories how they come alive. So I think we've got to take it from 2D to 3D, and we've got to make it absolutely social proof. So that means we've got to be honest about what we're doing. So when it comes to communicating the services that recruitment agencies offer, what's changed to ensure that clients are aware of the full range of services available to them?
I think this comes back to some of the things we've been saying, and that is that as we move forward as an industry, we need to become solution providers rather than just providing staff. We need to be organizations that are getting deeper into the fabric of the organizations we support by offering a broader range of services and products that will assist them around anything that is to do with human capital. So whether that is around providing them with HR expertise, or we are providing people, organizations with experts on DE&i or on compliance or whatever, I think we gradually, as we move forward over the next few years, need to be thinking about providing a broader range of services to our customers. And we communicate that on our websites and obviously through the social media channels. But the best form of communication is very much in keeping with this theme, and that is to be consultative and be consistently sitting in front of face-to-face clients on a regular basis. Seeing a customer, and I've said this a million times, once a year isn't good enough. We need to be seeing them, in my estimation, every 3 months at the very least, because business and the world we live in changes very quickly. So if you've been well briefed on January the 1st, 2024 by a client, and you don't see them till January the 1st, 25, you don't know what's going on in their company. You have no idea, and a huge amount has transpired in that 12-month period. You need to be seeing people at the very least every 13 weeks, because that's the world we live in today.
There's part of this, I think, that Howard's talked about before, about our consultants really understanding what they're selling. So, instead of having this one product, but actually understanding and valuing each part of the service. And Howard, you're in a much better position to talk about this than I am, but it really resonates with me that really having good training for your consultants so they understand what they're selling and how they price it.
Yeah, good point.
I've got a couple of clients who are doing this right now, and it's really interesting. And I've spoken to a lot more clients who have sort of taken it on board, and whether they've actually implemented it or not. And again, it's about how you implement the product and the service. So it's about compartmentalizing your services and having, what is a contingency service? What do you get for that? What do you get for an exclusive service? What do you get for a retained service? What do you get for talent advisory, RPO? And the list goes on. There's lots of different services that we can offer, and how we offer those solutions. I challenged a couple of technical clients and said, why don't you create an extranet page on your website so no one else can see it unless you allow the client to log on to that, but make it an interactive page. So you've got all your services and all your products on that page, and they can then drag and drop what they want from their service. And as you roll over each service, it gives the full features, advantages, and benefits of that service. And they've come back and said, OMG, how many clients really love that, because they can select what they want, they can create a bespoke service, and then it says call them for a price. So now they're calling up for a price to see what they've got, but now they know what's going on. So again, it goes back to that, how many clients are looking at your service before trying that service, but your website doesn't really give you what your service is really about. It doesn't allow you to
especially in an industry
service
where we've got a crap reputation, right? So they don't really understand the value of what they're buying. No, so I think that's a brilliant idea, Howard. I think I can really see the value of that.
Yeah. And what they said was it's really interesting how many clients have gone on there and played with it, and then when you go on and say that my price is 22%, they've got, oh god, that's high compared to normal, but look what you've what you've product that you want, and they went, all right, okay, now you understand what we actually do. And I think that's the bit clients don't understand what we do. We recruit. So you put an advert on a job board and you send us candidates. That's what they think we do.
That's what they think.
When you break it down in the minutiae detail that you want, then all of a sudden your solution provider is providing multiple solutions and not just a solution. And I'll give you a story from my past. I remember a client and we had 400 or 500 contractors in on this client site, and they didn't give us the top jobs because they thought we were a body shop. They didn't realize that we could supply the top end of the marketplace as well. And that's because they didn't know what services that we could provide, and we weren't selling it. And where we were having people on, a high margin of £400 or £500 a week margins, they had a body shop further up that were £1,500 to £2,000 a week margins, and we had been excluded from that marketplace because they didn't realize we could do that. So selling solutions is really important, and clients understanding what you actually deliver is really important.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just as an aside, I love OMD. I think they're a great band. I'm glad you mentioned it. I think the thing is that we have, what we're selling, depending on our sector, we're selling time saving. We're selling an individual promotion. We're selling a project completion. We're selling satisfied students or healthcare outcomes. That's what we're selling.
Yeah.
The way we get there is the people we provide. But often we talk about the services that we offer. Well, actually, it's what the output of those services offer that we should be selling
as well.
And that's as well. Because then you get a much more engaged conversation. And I'm not meant to sound like, I'm not trying to do recruitment 101 here, but often we forget that. Often we forget that that's the bit that makes us stick out.
Yep.
So I'm going to close up there this week. I think we've covered a massive amount as normal. And I think it's about then how agencies take that and apply that into the marketplace. And I think next week, we have a guest on next week who is a web design content deliverer, etc., etc. And we're going to talk about the importance of your digital footprint and how you can use your digital footprint to create a better offering to your client, etc., and how you use that shop window to attract and delight your clients and get them to call you, because that's what they're looking at. So Dave, Paul, Heather, thank you very much for your input. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your comments and all your input on through the session. And we look forward to seeing you all again next week on another webinar.
Thank you, everybody. Take good
See
care.
you all.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good week, everybody.
See you later. Bye.